Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Here we are again, kind of together, but virtually together, as good as it gets right now. And I don't mind that. Actually, I think we can all be very efficient, get to learn a lot, and get around the place a bit better. So where are we? We're going to be here at the Future of Greentech. First in a series. This one is, of course, all about transport. So we have an amazing lineup of extraordinary people. I like to big them up for two reasons. One, because they deserve it. And the second reason is because they are clever and they can share with us all sorts of things. Now, sharing is a good thing, absolutely, right now. As we all know, that's how we get things done quicker. We've all learnt to collaborate during this period of interesting times, and so that's really important. We'd like you to ask questions, so we will have a Q&A session. The basic setup is we're going to have a couple of speakers, then we'll have a little panel with them. Bit of chit chat. I can do a little bit of exploring and use your questions to talk to them. And then we'll obviously, at the conclusion of it all, come to some kind of sense of, well, what can we do about stuff? How can we improve things? So let's talk about Camden Clean Air very quickly first off. So this event has been organised by Camden Clean Air. It's their initiative, and they're a non-profit organisation looking at reducing air pollution across the borough of Camden. I used to live in London myself many years ago. It's a wonderful part of the world. I used to go to Camden Palace when I was younger, and of course Camden Market is world famous, a fantastic place. But they do brilliant work with the community, looking at providing resources to reduce air pollution. We know that's a key issue, especially in urban and metropolitan areas. They also run community-wide projects based around increasing EV charging infrastructure, because we know that's the other imperative around getting more EVs on the road. They've got to be charged up. So their focus on green tech and sustainability has led to organizations like Racing Green and various other people. But like I say, why I'm happy to lend my voice to it, I know all the wonderful speakers are, is because this is about one of the key issues of the day, which I know Julia will talk about when she talks about Formula E. So Julia Palle will be our first presenter, and then Iain Macbeth, who will be talking from a perspective of how to get vehicles on the road in fleets, from his experience at Enterprise Holdings. So without any further ado, I should just say, let's do the bit of housekeeping. If the fire alarm goes off, it's not due to go off, then you'll probably be in your house. My suggestion is carefully leave the house, run away. Go through either the front or the rear doors. Don't go out of the windows, especially if you're in an apartment. And other than that, we're not expecting a fire drill. So without any further ado, Julia, welcome to the stage. I hope you can hear me. I hope what I've just been saying for the past few minutes yes, I can see that I have. So Julia, come and tell us please all about Formula E. I know you've got a wonderful story. It's a race series I've been following since it began, since those early days.
I can see the poster behind you.
Yes, good. Exactly. That was it. First one in London. So bonjour, Julia. Welcome to the stage. Please tell us all about what Formula E is doing in and around sustainability and this quest to get clean air, reduce carbon, and all the wonderful things you're involved in. So good morning. Welcome. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So give me a second. I'm going to try and get the presentation up. Hopefully it's going to work for everyone. Oops, no, it's not what I wanted. Can you see my screen? Formula E Sustainable Mobility in Cities?
Yep, 100% got it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Great. So, I mean, in a very kind of like in a very few words, Formula E is 100% electric racing series that has been created launched in 2014. So it's all electric single-seaters cars that are racing inner cities. And I mean, as you will see, and that's going to be the flow of the presentation, we're going to go through why Formula E was created, and certainly not because the world needed another racing series. What was the leverage and the intention of Formula E, and how this is impacting mobility and transport as we know it, and hopefully we're going to be using it in the upcoming years in our cities and in what we will call smart cities. So let's start with the racing and the reason. So as I've said, Formula E is 100% electric racing, and we are used to, to match these two concepts of the racing and the reason, because this is really the DNA of Formula E. So Formula E is probably the first purpose-driven sport. Before, it was the time that we were calling it purpose-driven. We were created to basically bring a solution to contribute to fight climate change, with a specific focus on air pollution in inner cities, because we know that roughly, transport emission contributed between 30 and 25% of the pollution in cities, and that electric vehicles, being zero tape-up emissions, and if they are powered with the right type of energy, can drastically reduce these. So on one side, as I was saying, you have the racing element, which is 100% electric single-seaters, really exciting in terms of unpredictability on the street, on the track, and also the specific component of the fact that we are racing in the cities, again, to raise the message of the fact that people need to change the way they use transportation and go for electrification, but other type of transport alternatives, really. I'll come back to that. And then on the reason element, again, the sport was created for this need to bring solutions, concrete solutions and individual solutions to fight climate change. And then obviously we've been very much kind of like matching this very strong aspiration of the sport with tangible output that is basically kind of like leading the way in terms of walking the talk in terms of real sustainability leadership for the series. So one of the examples is that we've been the first sport in the world to achieve net zero carbon last September 2020. And also we have a very thorough approach of legacy programs in the cities that we race in. Again, I'll come back more to that. So if in a way you want, the motto of Formula E is that we race for a cleaner future faster. And as I was mentioning, the main reason why is the transport industry is kind of like a very important contributor to the global emissions that we have, especially in the urban centers. And also, a really kind of like shocking fact, which is that air pollution impacts 9 people out of 10. And this is an invisible threat. And I'm sure that Camden Clean Air is nodding at the moment. So the mobility, the electric mobility solution is then a very direct individual solution to contribute to fight that and to improve the air that we breathe. So basically, beyond kind of like this big aspiration, Formula E is a direct solution to break the EV barriers, and there are mainly 3. So the first one is the technical one. So in classic motorsport perspective, Formula E is a laboratory. So it's been a laboratory to improve, test electrification and kind of like electric technologies. And what you see, the picture on the left with the racing cars, is basically what is being transferred to the right. So these, electric vehicles that you and I can buy tomorrow in a shop, basically, and that have been directly benefiting from the R&D that was happening in the garages, so that they could transfer that into these cars. What is very interesting with Formula E in comparison to other series is that I would say kind of like the gap in between the track to the road is relatively small, and this is on purpose because we want the technology to be really quickly transferred and to be really quickly scalable and really adapted widely to the wider EV industry. That's, again, you and we will benefit from these improvements. A very concrete example is that in just 4 seasons, we doubled the battery capacity of our cars. Some of you, I'm sure Roger does, may remember that for the first few seasons, our drivers could not make the entire race with one car. They had to stop at the middle of in the middle of the race, jump from one car to another, and then finish the race. So this is not happening anymore, and this is due to the big technological push that we've been able to to do and to research basically through the technological platform that Formula E is offering for all suppliers and manufacturers in the EV industry. The other very important barrier was on the consumer side, so the person that would buy an electric vehicle. If you take, 10 years ago, what the electric market was looking like, I must say it was not really exciting. There was not many different model and range options for electric vehicles. They were not really sexy, they were not really fast, they were not really attractive. There was this range anxiety issue with the batteries. So basically, no one really wanted to buy an electric car. So what we've been doing with the championship is using the vehicle, pun intended, of the race to inspire people to see electric vehicles in a different way and to see them desirable. Obviously, these cars are fast. They are driving on the same streets that you and I would be then driving our own vehicles. So it's basically an opportunity to project yourselves driving electric vehicles, and maybe being for a few seconds when you watch the race, the heroes behind the steering wheel. And really, again, the whole point of Formula E is that we need to really accelerate this global EV push. At the time, we had not seen countries like UK, like France, many basically European countries taking such strong policy commitments to ban the sale of internal combustion engines. And obviously that was something very important that we needed to really inspire the general public to be wanting to buy electric vehicles. The last element, which is referencing the last element of the picture, which is the governments in relation to the infrastructure, is that we need the infrastructure to be adapted to our everyday life needs. And as you would go and put fuel in your car in a station, you need to have the right set of infrastructure, charging infrastructure in your city or in the motorways and so on, to make sure that you will be comfortable in thinking that you can take your electric car and you're going to be driving it for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers without worrying that you will have to stop your trip. And for us, this is very important because we work closely with governments, mayors' offices, and so on to organize our races. There is an indirect commitment from them to stimulate the electric mobility agenda. And certainly the best thing that they can do is to stimulate through the implementation of the right infrastructure. And this is absolutely essential to make sure that this this EV uptake and transition to a low carbon economy in terms of the mobilities is happening successfully. So moving on to the last element and really putting things into context. So from the micro level of the cars, the racing, to the macro context of where electric vehicles are operating, giving the perspective of mobility in cities. First of all, I wanted to take the time to, zoom out and show really what, the best probably strategic consulting groups in the world are mapping as the key trends of sustainable mobility for tomorrow, hopefully today, but certainly tomorrow. And basically these are this is summed up in 5 keywords. Electric is obviously the massive trend. Clean, as in the type of energy that is used to power vehicles around the world, so coming from renewables basically. Shared, a big trend. We've all taken, I'm sure, Uber at some point in our lives, and Uber is one of the example of this shared mobility where basically the ownership is not really the model, it's going to be mostly a rental model. Connected, again, this is probably something that we're really used to, how technology is going to be able to help traffic and to make it more efficient. And then autonomous driving. This is probably the one pillar that is yet to be developing more and more, although we're seeing it in cars and probably it's to become more and more mainstream in the coming years. This is something that on our tracks we've been testing. Basically, all of these elements we've been testing on our tracks. Our cars are powered with clean energy. We are encouraging the general public to come by public transport, shared transport, and so on, because we are in a parking event. The connected side, for those that know a bit of motorsport, this is absolutely critical in the garages to have all these connected technologies to get all the data. And the autonomous vehicle, we've been working since the very beginning with a company called RoboRace to be able to test in a very safe environment, which is offered by our tracks and the protections that we have in terms of barriers, the opportunity for these autonomous vehicles to interact and to learn in terms of data and kind of like softwares and so on, how to improve really. One other element which is very interesting is the event per se of Formula E, which is probably kind of like a sort of like look forward, look into the future of what I mean cities can look like in 5 or 10 years. So it's a sort of like mini test bed for governments to check what type of infrastructure, what type of technology would be needed, and certainly because the level of kind of like a tech requirement on our event is really high. It's really an opportunity to test what I mean 5G is requiring, Internet of Things, CCTV, and so on. Even the type of power requirements, because even if we race inner cities, most of the time we have to be off the grid, because the energy that we require to charge our cars and to power the rest of our event most of the time cannot be handled by the grid. So we've been doing very interesting experiments. I can give a very concrete example that I always find really interesting. For example, in Paris, where we race really in the heart of Paris in Les Invalides, we've been teaming up with IOC and Paris 2024 to work on an innovative call for projects to power our races 100% off the grid with renewable energy. Because most of the people don't really realize how complex it is to get that amount of power 100% on renewable sources. So that shows that, again, it's very much about looking forward at what the technology is going to be like and is going to require to cities in the future. And last but not least, how we've been kind of like gathering all these, I mean, key learnings and technologies, trying to make sure that we would be able to share, I mean, all these successes and challenges. Most of the time I said that challenges are more interesting. You learn way more from these challenges than the successes. And we've been lucky enough to work with our international federation, FIA, to create a program in 2017 called FIA Smart Cities, that is basically gathering both kind of like I would say the solution providers that we have in our ecosystem through the partners that we have within Formula E Championship, with the city officials, with I mean university and academia, or amazing NGO doing the work on the ground like Camden Clean Air, and basically putting a series of conferences in parallel of our events to raise the topic that is specific to the city that we are operating in. You see the picture of Hong Kong, which is, I mean, I'm sure that you're aware, both kind of like a great challenge in terms of mobility, and also a city that is certainly kind of like ranked at the top of what Smart City is trying to achieve and is trying to deliver. So this is very much the opportunity to bring together all these people within our ecosystem and to showcase on the ground practically what these solutions can look like. I mean, that's it. Again, no need to go back to the summary. If you have any questions, please feel free. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. I mean, you know, this is you've gone through an extraordinary list of things there. That's you know, that is quite amazing, Julia. One thing, we're going to do questions, by the way. So when we have our panel at the end, after we've heard from Iain shortly, we will have questions from the audience. What we'd like to do, which we think is a little bit novel, is unmute your microphone and you can ask the question yourself. Because all too often I reinterpret questions. It's a terribly bad habit. We should let people speak for themselves. So please use the Q&A box. For Julia and Iain, we'll be doing that after we've heard from Iain shortly. But can I quickly ask you, Julia, about Gen 3 cars? To Sylvain Philippi a few weeks ago, actually, just before the start of this season. And he did share with me a few of the metrics and the improvements. I was amazed. It's quite extraordinary. The innovation and the capability now that we're seeing in Formula E is extraordinary. How quickly is that going to move into production electric vehicles, do you think?
Well, again, as I've stated, the idea is to have a really kind of like a really low transfer time and also kind of like costs. This is why we're trying to keep the technology quite close from what we have on the track to be transferred on the road, because the point is not to kind of like to be, I mean, the state of art of the technology if we can't really apply that to everyday cars, really.
Yeah, yeah. And I know, because I've been lucky enough to go to quite a few of the races, the event that runs alongside it, as you just explained, you know, the FIA Smart Cities event, I think is really good. I mean, it really brings people to account. They have to show up, you know, the mayor has to appear.
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
to talk about what they're doing, you know, and people are now, because it's been going for, you know, what are we on, season 6 now, aren't we?
Season 7.
Season 7, yeah, exactly. Wow, how does time fly? But in all that time, what it's done is it's put a focus and pressure and attention on people. So when you can call it a circus, people can, that's fine.
Absolutely.
When the circus comes to town, you have to show up in the ring and talk about not just what you're going to do, but what you've done. So I like that fact. I think the initiative is very important. And can I just say, as one thing, when we watch the races on television and you never know who's going to win, all of that stuff, personally, I think it would be nice to have a little bit of that smart city content in there somewhere, because yes, you see it when you attend, and of course at the moment that's all a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But having been to a few, I would recommend that you get some of that content recorded and up into some of the stuff where people are looking at the races. Yeah, on the broadcast. I think that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Point taken. I'll discuss internally.
Merci bien. So thank you for now, Julia. Please don't go away, because we are going to have a mini panel with yourself and Iain, and we're going to get people to ask their questions in person. Thank you, Julia, and welcome Iain. Iain Macbeth. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Iain. Iain and I were going to go on a trip to Geneva last March. We were going to drive there in an electric, in an I-Pace, Jaguar I-Pace. And of course, we didn't, because it all changed at that point, which was a great shame. So Iain is Director of Electric Vehicle Strategy for Europe at Enterprise Holdings. He will tell us all sorts of things, I'm sure, but it's probably one of those companies that are more involved with hundreds or thousands of EVs than any of us probably realize. So I don't want to get into talking about what you do, because then you're going to do that, Iain. So welcome to the stage. Let's try and go to Geneva, maybe next year if it happens.
Morning, Roger. Thanks for that. Yeah, and I think some of the learning since then is that we were maybe a little optimistic in our route planning at the time. Haven't driven many more miles in EVs since then, but yeah, it's really interesting, Julia, just now, because I remember going to the launch of Formula E at the Bloomberg headquarters in London in 2013, and I really hadn't got a clue that I would be driving an EV literally 6 years after that. So yeah, things have changed, and of course I've attended a number of the FIA Smart City events. So careful what you wish for about uploading video content, because I remember getting videoed along with Mark Preston and others at various events, and I'm not sure you want my ugly mug on these sort of types of events.
Yeah,
anyway.
well, I think people use me and they take a screenshot, and it keeps the kids away from the fire. They put it on the mantelpiece. So yeah. Anyway, yes, Iain, please take it away. The stage is yours.
So can you see that, Roger?
I can indeed. Yes, it's a map.
Okay, so it is a map indeed. So I thought I'd just take a moment just to introduce people to Enterprise Holdings. It's probably one of those companies that many people won't necessarily know, like, scale of the organization. So headquartered in St. Louis in North America, we've got around about 1.7 million vehicles on fleet at the moment. A little bit down, obviously, for obvious reasons, but it's one of the largest fleets in the world, and probably the largest fleet of privately owned vehicles, because Enterprises is still a family-owned business. We're present in around about just under 10,000 branches across the world, and 100 countries and territories as well. Bring it back to sort of the UK. We've got about 5,000 employees in the UK, roughly 120,000 vehicles on our fleet at the moment, and 450 branches. So within that 120,000 vehicles, we've got roughly 50,000 commercial vehicles. So people may be familiar with seeing our vans on the road occasionally, but there's a load of other stuff that's unbranded that will be around you on a day-to-day basis you probably never see. So I kind of just wanted to spend a bit of time just saying about what that vehicle rental means for the UK in particular. So there's a supporting employment, there are tax revenues and things like that. So just some statistics, bits and pieces about that. I just want to make the point here that rental is a little bit different from the lease world, where you might have a vehicle for 3 years or 4 years as a company car, that kind of thing. We're different from logistics, where people have an opportunity to charge vehicles overnight. So, you know, it's quite a significant unseen part of the economy. And what we actually have is a whole pile of unique business lines. As I said, we're a family-owned company. We've been going for about 60 years now. And we started off not in car rental per se, but accident and replacement vehicles for insurance industries. So take this as a proxy branch of ours, maybe 10, 20 car parking spaces out the front. If you see more than 10 cars out in a car park, we're having a bad day, because typically a branch like that will have 100 or 200 vehicles operating out of it. You can never park them all there at the same time, and that was quite an interesting challenge this time last year as various things shut down. But typically we operate at between 80 and 90% utilisation of our fleet. Most people, as I said, will probably recognise us from going to the airport and on holidays and railway stations and things like that. But a large proportion of our activities is actually the corporate markets, business travel, people flying into airports or requiring a vehicle to go on a client visit, that kind of thing. Leisure is an important part of the business, and it's obviously a little bit depressed at the moment. Hopefully light at the end of the tunnel before too long. And as I mentioned, insurance replacement, we deal with most of the UK insurance industry. So if you're unlucky enough to have a bump in your car and it has to go into a body shop, the vehicle that is supplied to you is quite often an enterprise vehicle. Now, all of these are quite interesting from an EV perspective. And the other thing there is a commercial hire, which is for a longer period of time. And we're going to talk more about cars today, but happy to take any questions on the commercial side. But all of these have certain challenges in the journey toward electrification. So I mentioned our utilisation rate. We have to have quick turnarounds. 1 in 4 of our vehicles is turned around within an hour between customers, and that's clearly got challenges in terms of EV charging. Customers are still quite uncomfortable with EVs in some markets. There does remain some range anxiety. Increasingly, that's more about the availability of charging infrastructure, and we'll come back to that a little bit. And then there's cost of renting an EV. They are a little bit more expensive to acquire at the moment. So I just wanted to sort of give you an idea that typically, even today, a rental vehicle, before we get to electrification, tends to be cleaner than the average vehicle in a wider park. And that's because we cycle our vehicles roughly on a 6 to 9 month basis. We buy the cars ourselves. 98% of our vehicles are owned by Enterprise, bought by Enterprise. And then we recycle them back into the second-hand market. So we've already got much higher compliance with Euro 6 and things like that. And clearly, as we move to EVs, that is going to sort of change even higher. Julia mentioned about shared mobility. So what I wanted to sort of get across the point is vehicle rental is a form of shared mobility. It's sharing an asset amongst multiple users. And of course, we have the traditional car rental we've kind of just discussed there. But we also have Enterprise Car Club here in the UK. So in terms of accelerating that move towards EVs, rental actually is quite an interesting proposition. We always pride ourselves on our ability to manage an incredibly complex logistics feat. It's basically about the right vehicle in the right place for the right purpose for the right customer. in a cost-effective way. And we are involved in a bunch of other mobility services, mobility as a service. We're in partnership with a number of active travel providers, that kind of stuff, and even work with the public transit, bus companies and things like that. So enterprise recognises that the future of the car is going to change, and we're getting heavily involved in some of the things that Julia mentioned earlier on. So we kind of just thought that it's worth pointing out where that sort of space may fit. Now, we recognise that congestion, air quality are all challenges in an urban environment, and absolutely cars are not the right thing for short trips where walking and cycling is better. But car sharing and car rental sort of sits in that middle ground where it's actually quite a good way of getting around. And there's a bunch of statistics out here. I'm not going to read those out. Maybe share this later on. But basically, when you're looking at car sharing, there is a tendency for people to walk and cycle more and to use public transit, and perhaps not to buy that second car. So our view is that shared fleets are a great way of familiarising the public and getting consumers confident with EVs and overcoming some of the barriers that we hear on a day-to-day basis. Research has shown that something like 26% considering an EV do not go on to purchase one because of the barriers there. And I think those are the sort of things we can sort of maybe discuss later. But once people have tried an EV, they generally have a very high satisfaction rate. And anecdotally, a lot of people I know who tried an EV first time actually would rather stay in an EV than go back to a traditional internal combustion engine. But we have got those unsatisfactory experiences, and charge point availability is one of them, and charge is the other. Now, what we think rental can do is positively showcase all these aspects, and then also provide feedback to partners in the space to improve the customer experience going forward. And I would say that, you know, enterprise's raison d'etre really is about customer satisfaction. It's very, very high part of our business is ensuring that the customers get the right vehicle and the right experience. So we do offer a shop window for EVs. We can get people into the newest vehicles. It's a low commitment. You can rent them by the day or even with the car by the hour. And you can experience those without sort of having to necessarily go out and buy one and then realise it's not quite the right solution for you. And of course, we know what some of those benefits are. It's reduced fuel costs, the comfort of the driving experience, the quietness of that. And I think over time, we'll have the reduced repair and maintenance costs. And of course, as Julia mentioned earlier, the environmental impact is incredibly important. So we think a large proportion of our customers are willing to try an EV. And some of the research done by the British Vehicle Rental Association and Roland Berger, who we've been doing some work with recently, and you might have noticed their logo up in the top right-hand corner, there is a high propensity for people to want to go out and try this. Now, we've got some obstacles to go across, and one of the key things is about rental customers not having access to home charging. And there's an oft-quoted stat out there that 80% of vehicle charging will be done at home. Well, you know, in the UK, roughly about a third of households don't have access to off-street parking, charging on web parking side of things. So we think access to public rapid charging infrastructure is really important going forward. You can see some statistics about there. Typically our rentals go over 150 kilometres on a single trip. So recharging is part and parcel of that journey going forward. You don't really rent a car to spend 5 or 6 hours on a fast charger. What you really want to do is get to a rapid charger, 10, 20 minutes tops, get a cup of coffee and off you go again. The other side of things is that we turn vehicles around. I mentioned that we turn around vehicles, maybe 1 in 4 of our vehicles within an hour. And that kind of gives you an idea of the charging challenge that we have within our branches. And of course, we also move the vehicles around between branches. So what we're looking at is potentially all 470 branches we have at the moment in the UK is electrifying that, and we're in the first stages of doing that. So what we can do is accelerate this EV as a test experience. And I think I'll give you a little idea of what this roadmap could look like and how we can help the consumer move towards an EV as an everyday experience and moving towards that 2030 decarbonisation targets from the government. So again, we've mentioned apprehension. We can talk the customer through the right vehicle, the right battery size. Still, a lot of people don't really understand that there's quite a big difference between having a 30 kilowatt battery and a 90 kilowatt battery in your vehicle. We can talk people through that with our customer help teams. Cost, we can look at the right options for you. Again, there's some different classes of vehicle out there for different challenges. Driving wise, we've got the range anxiety we've mentioned. So again, we need to get people in the right vehicles. It's no good for somebody going, I don't know, Newcastle to London, for instance, and putting them in perhaps one of the vehicles with a range of under 100 miles. So right vehicle for the right journey. Again, we can help people choose out of the rental booking process. Recharging is, again, one of the big key issues we've got at the moment is the fragmentation of the charging infrastructure, different companies. We know this will get better, but if you're in a different country from your home location or you're away from where you live, you're not necessarily going to know where those charge points are. Again, we have an opportunity to help people through apps and giving people a charging environment where you can not really worry about being a member of a particular different network, not having an RFID card for multiple networks, all that kind of stuff. Again, we mentioned cost and charge, but again, I think what people perhaps don't realize is how much cheaper as EVs are to fuel at the moment, and particularly if you have got access to overnight charging. That could of course change as the Exchequer seek to recover fuel duties, but certainly for the time being, they generally are cheaper to run. And then, of course, we mentioned that thing about the universal charging systems, and we potentially can actually stitch that sort of network together. So we've got pain points we can find. I think we can have the benefits for the customers, and we can actually sort of feed that back into the wider infrastructure going forward. And then, of course, from our perspective, there are some certain costs involved. So EVs are more expensive to purchase than ICE vehicles at the moment, so holding costs are higher. The financing costs are higher at the moment as well. Charging infrastructure, our branch, is something that we're going to have to consider, and it's not something we do today. We don't generally build a petrol station in each of our branches. And we also have a prospect of having to buy more vehicles than we do today, just because of the slightly higher downtime we've got with EVs at this moment in time. And repair and maintenance, we think probably the maintenance is probably going to be less, maybe a little bit heavier on tyre wear perhaps. At the moment, though, battery costs are quite expensive, and I think that's something of a challenge in terms of cost of replacement of battery packs and the impact that has on the repair side of the business. So just to summarise where we are today, I think one of the key things over the next couple of years is establishing the public infrastructure and then driving that EV transition through a mobility shop window, which could be, the rental experience like Enterprise, and then getting towards 2030, where this is a norm. I suspect 10 years from now, people will look back at the conversations we're having today and laugh and say, God, they knew so little. Again, I think this part about EV charging infrastructure is really, really key. And I know Graham's on the event later on. I'm sure he'll talk about the grid resilience and that side of things, but that is a key thing at the moment to really get that infrastructure in place. And of course, what we'll be able to do is stimulate demand for used clean vehicles as our vehicles come off fleet and go onto the second-hand market. So just my final point, I think with the right mix of incentives, the policy and funding, shared mobility services can help government to accelerate the EV uptake in a sustainable way and to meet those 2030 carbonised targets. And that's be done.
Well, thank you, Mr. Macbeth. That's a lot to take in, and you're busy in a lot of areas here. And I've certainly got some questions, but it's not my show. It's the people watching it show. So what we're going to do now, Georgina McGivern, by the way, I'd like to give her a shout out. She has put this whole event together. She's found the speakers, she's assembled the whole proposition, and I'd like to just tip my hat to her because I think she's done a great job. And in the background, she's doing all the hard work. I just get to sit here and talk a bit. So what we're going to do, as promised, Julia, if you'd like to join us back on stage, thank you. We're going to see if we can get our friends that are asking questions, our audience, to actually ask them in person. So let's just see if we can do it. So Iain Leputra was first at 10:15. He put his question in. So if Georgina can open Iain's mic, we can actually hear from Iain in person. This is how we roll here. This is leading edge technology if it works. So yeah, Iain, if you can maybe put your hand up, if you're hopefully still listening, and we'll see if we can do that. If not, we'll move on to the next one. If we can't get Iain, let's see if we can get Mark. Mark Saunders was next. And if we can't get either of them, I will ask the questions. Here we go. Yes. So Mark Saunders, you are there to ask your question in person, sir. So fire away.
Hi, Roger. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for the show so far. It's really good, really enjoying it. I just wanted to ask of Formula E. I imagine that cities really want to compete to have you come to their cities. What will you ask them to do? What kind of infrastructure will you ask them to put in? You talked about a legacy, which I think is a fantastic idea. But what are you going to ask them to do? Can you get the cities to compete for your attention? That's my question.
Thank you, Mark. That's a very good question, and I mean, actually, this is exactly what we have and what we are working on. We have a pipeline of cities that are basically kind of like coming to us and wanting to apply to get kind of like a Formula E race organized, and we basically send a team of experts to check that technically we can actually, set up an event, and then basically there are also more political discussions on how the city is going to be using the event as an opportunity to enhance their mobility agenda or sometimes their wider sustainability agenda. We've been kind of like, for example, having very interesting discussions with World Bank on how, mayors are seeing, sometimes electric mobility as an opportunity really to stimulate their citizens to actually kind of like use and change electric vehicles. So this is clearly kind of like parameters that are very important to us, both the technical side, the place where the city is kind of like is envisioning us having a race, and then this kind of like political level on how we can support each other in kind of like enhancing the electric vehicle agenda, really.
Yeah, that is indeed a great question. And by the way, Mark, as you're first up, and I should have said this at the beginning, we are recording the event. So if you do come on and ask a question, that is deemed to be, you're okay with it being recorded in that fashion. Just to check then, Mark, is that okay with you?
Yeah, fine with me.
Great. Okay. Fantastic. No, great first question. So we're going to move on. Chris Allen has actually asked a couple of questions. So the challenge for Chris, if we can get him up, and I think we can you kind of either do them really quickly, Chris, or can you combine them all together? So there you are. That's your challenge. Welcome to the stage. Iain and Julia are there for you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we've got you fine. Thanks.
Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, there's three questions, but I think maybe some of them you'll answer through the show, or hopefully answer through the show. So the first one was for Julia in terms of the supply chain that's been impacted by Formula E. I just wonder if you've got any metrics, if you've seen any growth from the supply chain in EVs. And the second one was really around V2X and part of the mobility in smart cities. I see a huge change, convergence, I should say, here, and a big challenge to industry to actually meet some of these business models to provide a commercial solution.
So on the supply chain, let me know if this is what you had in mind with your question. In terms of the manufacturers, at the moment, Formula E is the one championship out of all international, we are a world championship, but international and beyond world championship that has the biggest lineup of manufacturers. We have the 4 Germans, we have also Nissan, we have Mahindra, which is a big group in India. We have NIO, which is a big group in China. We have DS, which is Peugeot Citroën in France, and and so on. So we have the biggest lineup, and certainly this testifies how much kind of like the technology, the EV technology, is of interest to I mean the global OEMs, and how much they are using us as a laboratory and a platform to develop and also showcase that they are very committed to this segment. On the smart city side, I don't know if it was kind of like for Iain, for me.
It's again, it might be a question that goes to later in the show. It was really a case of, you showed on, I think it's slide 10, around smart mobility, and what the key challenges were you're seeing from the different management consultancies. So the question was, do you see how some of these industries are reacting to actually some of the needs being driven by electric vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The good thing is that certainly all the industries are very much embracing kind of like these needs and kind of like these wider trends. And as I was, I mean, mentioning, robo-race was an example, but Tesla is obviously kind of like been at the forefront of autonomous driving. Renewable energy use is something that is becoming mainstream, really. I mean, on an individual level, we can all switch to a green energy provider, and it's the same for kind of like for businesses and so on. Now it's a specific for us on events to try and get there and so on. But I certainly see that, I mean, all the ecosystem is going in the right direction. It's just kind of like these big trends that need to be taken into account as kind of like the way forward.
Thank you.
By the way, Iain, Chris, I've noticed, is Director of Energy Hub Developments Limited. So he might have something in prospect to help you get all your cars charged up and all of that stuff. So that's good. There you are. I'll give you a shout out there, Chris. Incidentally, we are now bringing up the audience on stage to ask their questions. We're not opening their cameras, just in case they've got their pajamas on still. So that's why. So let's go to the next one, Georgina. Anthony asked a question, and we'd like to bring Anthony up if he's there. And yeah, I like this. I think it's nice asking the question in person. So I can see you're there, Anthony. Hopefully we'll unmute your microphone, and then you can ask the question yourself. You're still muted at the moment, but I'm sure that will get resolved. And by the way, get ready, Clive and Sam. Oh, good. Anthony,
sorry.
Yeah, fire away.
I wasn't sure you were talking to me. Yes, I was just intrigued by the concept of the electric car, which I'm very interested in buying at some point. But if you wanted to do a journey, for instance, at the moment, between 2 points that were further than the range of the car, is there a sort of a computer-based system where you can put your origin and your destination into the program, and it gives you a route which tells you where you can charge up on route to give you the best, the most efficient, get you there basically.
Yeah, no, great question. I'll jump in very quickly, then I'd like Iain to answer. ZapMap. If you look at something like ZapMap, and there are several others, they can show you your travel, your journey. They can show you the charge points. They can you put in the exact vehicle you're using, etc., etc. So yes, there's good software, good apps, good backup, good things that are there. Iain, would you like to answer that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, sure, Roger. I mean, I was going to say exactly the same. Shout out for ZapMap.
Sorry.
Done a great job, but yeah, it is important because different vehicles have got different charge cables. The Nissan I've got behind me here has got CHAdeMO. Some vehicles have got CCS. Some will be wanting to go in just to Type 2s and things like that. So just understanding the type of charge point that you want to access en route is quite important. So there's a bunch of information out there. And again, it's one of the things that we're looking to do in the future to help our customers, plan their journeys from A to B, because you're right, you want to be able to have options around you in case there's a charge point not available. We've all had that in the past. We want to know how quickly we want to charge when we're at that moment in time, and also the cost of doing so, because there's quite a variability out there on charging costs as well. So that is an area that's developing rapidly at the moment. There's a bunch of people out there with apps in place. Some of the OEMs have actually got that in the head units, and you can plan your journey actually in the vehicle. and you can download stuff at home and actually just import that into your sat nav and things like that as well. So all doable, and it's getting better all the time. That's the good news.
Yeah, and Anthony, I'd recommend Robert Llewellyn's Fully Charged channel on YouTube. In particular, Maddie Moat ran a series of, should I buy an electric vehicle or not? What's it like? And, because it's I think these days it's very tempting for a lot of us who've been doing it for a while to assume everybody knows a ton of stuff. Well, they don't. A lot of people have never gone anywhere near an EV. Why would they know? So I think it's a great question that you ask, and I'm really pleased you asked it. So were you happy with the answers? Has it helped?
Absolutely. What I'll do now is have a look at this Zap map and see what it can tell me, and because it might make me more likely to go and buy an electric car. That's what I'm trying to do, really. We're very concerned about petrol cars. I've got a petrol car at the moment which only does about 29 to the gallon, and that's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. There is another question actually that I could ask.
Go on then.
Rather than having charging points, is there any mileage in having, if you like, battery storage garages where instead of going in to buy petrol, you go in and change your battery or get someone to change your battery for you, which only takes about 5 minutes, and then just carry on to the next place and so on.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, if I may, it's very rude of me, jump in. Battery swap is something that NIO use in China. So you do just as you described, Anthony. There's also wireless charging coming, but I'm not going to go off on a tangent with that. But I don't know, Julia or Ian, would you like to respond to Anthony's thought there about other alternatives other than just plugging it in?
Yeah, I mean, battery swap is one of the things that's been around and discussed for quite some time. And I think NIO probably the pioneers of that now after Better Place back 10 years ago. I think the challenge for the OEMs really at the moment is, agreeing standards and to actually everybody to have a standardized battery pack, because at the moment the architecture of the vehicles makes that challenging. But all of this is changing at the moment, and I should have probably said about ISO 15118, the plug and charge type protocols. It's part of the connected vehicle conversation in lots of ways, but in future, that could actually replicate what Tesla drivers experience today, and not having to worry about RFID cards. You just plug the vehicle into the port and you get billed directly. It takes away a lot of the customer pain points.
Julia, did you want to say something on that?
Yeah, I basically wanted to, to add to your point regarding the wireless charging. This is a technology that we tested on the Formula E tracks at the very beginning of our existence. It was the Halo technology of a US company, and that was really interesting, because if they were to scale up these kind of technologies, you basically would constantly charge in the cities while you are driving, because it's literally on the ground, and that's absolutely a seeming less process when you're a driver. So this is also really promising.
Yeah, I've come across that.
Yeah, good. Anthony, great question. Thank you so much. We're going to move on to Clive Southwell next, and Sam Lee, if you could get ready after that, please. Clive, I know. Clive has been in the EV game for the longest time. He's very informed. He knows what he's talking about, and he's going to ask you both a challenging question, I've no doubt. So, Mr. Clive Southwell, welcome to the stage, and Julia and Ian are there. Fire away, please.
Hi, Roger. Question really more directed to Ian. In my former life, I worked closely with Enterprise and was the first person to supply Nissan to Enterprise and then later Peugeot. So I sort of know the model quite well. I just thought that with the move to more and more people leasing electric vehicles as opposed to owning them, driven by the higher cost of the vehicles and concern about battery costs, do you think that will change your business model? Will it necessitate a longer holding time for the fleet, and will that sort of impact on the model of owning and reselling those electric vehicles due to the lower rates of car purchasing?
Yeah, so I can tell from that question, Clive definitely does know the Enterprise business model pretty well. Yeah, I mean, our big challenge at the moment, there's a bunch of factors involved in this. Obviously, vehicle supply has been impacted by the pandemic. There's a couple of other factors in the UK which I won't go into. But yeah, vehicle supply has been the first part of it. So actually the cost of those vehicles makes it difficult for us at the moment to have a price comparison with an ICE vehicle. So clearly the lease model works very well for the business corporate markets. But those vehicles will roll over into the second-hand market, stimulating demand down the line. And I think this transition period is quite tricky for us to navigate, but 10 years from now, when everybody's an EV, it won't be a huge amount different. A couple of other things in there, though. What we're finding at the moment is that since last year, the 1st of April, with the company car tax changes, it was amazing how many people who previously had company cars and lease cars suddenly realised that they could do an EV when they weren't paying £500 benefit in kind all of a sudden. So we saw was that really great stimulus from the government translating into an uptake in EVs. Of course, from our perspective, because we deal with lead-in, lead-out cars and also replacement for accident repairs, actually that market for us is really good because we don't really have to educate the customer. They've already made the transition in their minds. They've got the charging at home. They've got the charge networks, access to those kind of things. So for that perspective, actually that side of the business becomes a lot simpler. I could probably go on for hours on this, but Roger will probably sort of be bored to tears.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. Look, these are all important questions, and whether people like Clive, who's been around it for a long time, or some of our other speakers and people listening in, it is about the detail, and it is about talking about some of the things that are a challenge. The switch to electrification isn't simple. It's not, oh yeah, it's just drive EVs, sorted. It's highly complex with an epic shift underway, and we shouldn't underestimate it. So, but what we should, I think, do is help people make the journey, whether they're individuals or other people. It's all about trying to make sure that it all comes together nicely. Anyway, let's move on to more questions because we're going to run until 10 past the hour, and then we're going to have a little comfort break. It's going to be just like being somewhere in reality. There shouldn't be a queue for the toilets, hopefully. So this is a big bonus of not being somewhere. If you can make a cup of tea in 10 minutes, you won't even have to wait for that or queue. So it's perfect. So let's invite Simon to the stage if he's there, and Stefan after that, please. So Simon Garwood has got a question, another one for Iain. So he'll pop up, and let me just get that in front of me. Yeah, there's Simon. Hi, Simon. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Roger. How are you doing?
Nice to hear from you. I can't see you, just like I said, in case you're in your pajamas.
Well, that's probably a good job. I've got a good voice. Yeah. So my question is probably for Iain. Hi, Iain. How are you doing? And you showed on your presentation a very clear roadmap how enterprise could ease the route for customers to get into EVs by explaining what was a suitable car, what are the limitations, etc. Do you envisage a similar route map for car clubs? So this would actually allow car club vehicles to transition from mostly hybrids currently to EVs.
Hi Simon, good to hear from you. And just for Roger's benefit, Simon and I used to live next door to each other for many years, so I probably have seen him.
We go back away.
So yeah, Simon, I mean, we've got one of the largest car clubs in the UK. Around a proportion of those are EV. The challenge at the moment from that perspective is we operate a back to base model, which means that if you take the vehicle away from a bay, you have to return it to the same bay. So it's not free floating like some of the other operators used to operate before COVID. So the challenge really is finding on-street charging locations for people to access, and that's where local authorities come in. So it becomes an interesting conversation between the local authority aspirations on smart cities and that kind of stuff and decarbonisation, finding the spaces, and then getting the charging infrastructure installed. So it becomes that sort of conversation between the utilities, the CPOs, the local authority, the car club, and the customer. And at the moment, we're seeing a huge amount of interest from local authorities across the country, most that we've ever seen in terms of installing electric car clubs. So really very interesting times going forward.
And
I would just say, actually, just from Simon's perspective, we have actually now got a Toyota Mirai hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicle equipped with car club technology. So we will be able to bring some fuel cell vehicles to the market soon as well.
Well, there you are. You heard it here first, Simon. Thank you for the question. And the good news is Iain is back. Iain Leputra has a question for Julia. I see Iain is a professor at the business school in Ghent University. So if Iain would like to join us, you can ask your question live. There you are, Iain. It's all yours, my friend. Julia is waiting for your question.
Thank you, Roger. And I'm actually no longer in Ghent. I've been in France for the past 8 years. And I'm
sorry. Sorry.
So I'm a professor at the ESSEC Business School, and I run a research center that is very dedicated to tracking and tracing what's happening in the electromobility space. And so, so thank you. My question is for Julia. I had a question. I heard that you said that the Formula E is offering a platform that is basically providing, that's what I understood, technology or R&D to the OEMs that are competing in the Formula E. And so I was wondering, how does that work in terms of, you know, if this is a collective knowledge pool and resource pool, how does it work in terms of competition that you still want to happen between the different teams?
Yeah.
And technology transfer? Who's the owner of the intellectual property? How do you organize the transfer of this technology? Just very interested in the tensions between collaboration and competition on the other. Thank you.
Great question. Great question.
It's a very good point indeed. So basically, there are some elements of the cars that are common to all competitors, and they basically agree that this is going to be kind of like a piece that they work in common. The example that I gave on the battery was a very good example that they all agreed that the battery technology would be common, which is still the case, which is quite interesting because obviously the battery technology is really central, but at the same time, they've all agreed to contribute to the same technology in order to advance faster, instead of the one basically paying the biggest amount of money to get kind of like the fastest EV technology, I mean battery technology for the EVs. And some elements they are allowed to customize and to bring on their own technologies, namely around the powertrain and so on. So this is a mix that we regulate with the International Federation, and we regulate on the basically kind of like the aspects where we are giving them enough kind of like space so that they can basically use this laboratory to improve and to transfer to their cars. Whereas on the key, probably the most challenging parts in terms of what the industry is struggling, we are normally keeping, the innovation kind of like gathered so that everyone is contributing towards it and not competing against each other. So the battery was an example. What we're working on for Gen 3, Roger asked me about that, is about the fast charging. This is what we see as the biggest barrier now in terms of the kind of like the market adoption, the fact that we need to have ultra fast charging, and this is what is going to be tested on our cars as a common technology research within the group.
Very good. Thank you, Iain. Yeah, very important question. There's a lot more to that, of course, than Julia's given a great, intro to it. But of course, there's lots more. It's a very intriguing thing. I'm going to try and get 2 more questions in. Stefan, hopefully, is around, and then we'll come to Sam Lee. So if either of those are about, oh, good. I think we've got Stefan. Yeah, go on, Stefan. Fire away, my friend.
Hello. Good morning, everybody. I'm
good morning.
Interested watcher of EVs. I have a particular interest in air toxicity and abatement and sort of improvement technologies. One of the things clearly driving everybody's thinking on that is the penetration of EVs and how that can be accelerated. And one of the key things, as Iain has mentioned, is range anxiety, not to be taken out of context, of course. And Musk talks about battery day, and that's when charging speeds and capacities go through a step change with technology. And I just wondered whether Julia or Iain had a view as to whether that time frame is still correct, and what impact that might have in the car pool and people's readiness to start buying more readily.
Interesting. Go on then, Julia, Ian. That's a tricky one.
It is. I mean, I think it's really interesting that Volkswagen announcing a huge investment in gigafactories. I think it was on Monday. And it's very interesting to see where the battery manufacturing capacity is heading at the moment. So I think really 2030 is when we're seeing sort of parity-ish, don't quote me on that one, about volumes of batteries being manufactured in Europe to actually meet the number of vehicles that are being manufactured. Those gigafactories are using current technology to the best of my knowledge, and that may be changed quite quickly. But I think the changes in battery manufacturing will take a little while to hit the actual vehicles that we see on sale today. I think so there's a number of criticalities there. I mentioned about the infrastructure. Typically, the next 2 or 3 years is really critical in getting the infrastructure ready, but then it will then transition and getting that power into those batteries going forward. So I think there's a number of factors here. So the availability of batteries, the type of batteries, the infrastructure to charge them, and then the availability of the vehicles for the right marketplace. Because let's face it, there aren't a huge amount of affordable EVs on the market yet. They're coming, things like the ID3, the Ford and VSA product. But up to now, Roger and I have been happy to be able to swan around in Audi e-trons and Jaguar I-Paces, but that's not a typical vehicle for the marketplace.
No.
So my guess is that it will take a little bit longer than 2025 to see that penetration. 2030, we should be plenty of those vehicles around.
Well, let's not forget that Renault Zoe is Europe's top-selling EV, actually. So, notwithstanding the glamour and the glitz and the attraction of Tesla, inevitably, because they're so good at all of that, and the Model 3 is amazing. It's an amazing car. There you are. There's Renault, an established OEM with that fantastic, car at a reasonably good price. Sounds like some Top Gear thing, doesn't it? So listen, I think it's a great question, Stefan. There's a lot more that we could go into in all of that, but in the interest of just cracking through this, let's leave it at that for the moment. But thank you for asking a question. I hope Miles, Sam, is Sam around? Sam Lee was next, actually. If not, because looking at the time on Sam's question, it could be that he's gone to bed. That's the thing with these, it's all over the world, isn't it? You've no idea where people are. But if Miles is around, Miles Gillespie has got a question for Julia. I think that'll be our wrap-up question. So if you're there, Miles, the stage is yours. There's Julia for you.
Thank you very much. A really nice presentation, really interesting to see. But I must admit, I'm quite curious. If you're having an event at a city and all of a sudden you're turning up with a lot of high capacity vehicles, how do you get capacity in? Because it's going to be temporary and it's hard enough to get capacity at locations for charging anyway. I'm assuming you must turn up with charging facilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great question.
This is certainly one of the challenges, and also not surprised that this is going to be the focus of generation 3 of the car. The charging infrastructure is going to be really at the center of what we do. So certainly we turn up with all technical material that is necessary for the charging. And as I was saying, this is where also the source of the energy sometimes is really a struggle, because it's not that we can plug on the grid. We have to be off the grid most of the time because of the amount of energy that we need in such short amount of time to charge the cars and to power the rest of the event. So this is a big focus. This is a real challenge. And again, the example I was giving on the partnership that we've developed with IOC and Paris 2024 in France, one of the many, it really illustrates that, this is a challenge that obviously we're experiencing us from the electric vehicles perspective, but I would say it's a wider city focus that is a good opportunity to test and to try and improve.
Will you be coming to London? I know you were doing Cenex, and then COVID came.
Yeah, we're still hoping to be able to have our race in London at the end of the summer.
Brilliant. Yes, please.
Yeah, Miles, I've got to say, when they had it in Battersea Park a few times, it was just a joy. Unfortunately, a few people that lived around the place didn't quite share that view, but let's not get into that. Listen, thank you. That was a lovely question to finish on, Miles. Thank you to everybody else who's asked questions. I do like this, in getting people to ask them, in person. It's sort of it's great. But this is the first conclusion of the first session today. I really enjoyed listening to both of you. So thank you, Iain. Thank you, Julia, and thank you for answering all those questions so nicely and neatly. I see that we've got Imogen there waiting for the next session, which will be in about 10 minutes. Just under 10 minutes. Imogen Pierce, Head of City Engagement and Integration at Arrival. And then we've also got Daniel Masenga Grant, who's an environmental consultant and knows a whole bunch of clever stuff. So we'll do the same thing again, 2 presentations, a nice panel discussion and a good Q&A with everyone on there. But for now, for just this session, please go and take a comfort break. There shouldn't be a queue for coffee or tea. And hopefully, as I said earlier, you can just walk straight into the toilet if you need to. Iain, Julia, thank you for now.
Thanks, Roger.
Pleasure. Thanks for
having me. See you later. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.